Chris Jones, Times online, rugbypass.com is our go-to guy, 120. Chris, we spoke on Monday and both of us agreed that Owen Farrell, a no-arms tackle, he was going to go for a skate. He was going to miss something from the World Cup. Now, the three-man Australian panel has rescinded this red card. Words like mockery are being thrown around. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I think they have completely undermined the new bunker review system. Part of their explanation for saying that, of course, the guilty person in all this now is Jamie George, who pushed Basham in such a way that he was falling into a contact area where Farrell couldn't adjust his hit. Of course, when you look at the stills of the hit he put in, Farrell's legs are absolutely straight. There's no bend, nothing, so he could only go up. So, yeah, that's just like that. We digress. Look, the bunker review system is now totally undermined. And part of the thing they said, while they said it wasn't a red card, it was a yellow card, is because they had more time to look at this and more angles than the bloke in the bunker. Now, the point about having a bloke in a bunker is to take away the decision from the referee, who doesn't have the 10-minute process that they give to the bunker to make this decision. So they're now saying that the system they've instigated is no use. It is just ridiculous. This is going to have so many repercussions heading into the World Cup. And I agree with Steve Luatoa, who's going to be playing for Samoa against England, who says, what a joke.
No, it is.
A lot of people say that.
Well, I'm sitting here while we're talking and I'm watching replays of it, and I can't see any factors at all that would lead to overturning that. I mean, by saying, the guy's dipping down, he makes no attempt to throw his arms into that tackle at all. He's got form. He's got really bad form, and now he's actually free to be able to play away to Ireland this weekend. It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Absolutely. The man in the bunker, by the way, was Ireland's Brian McNeice. So he made the call, which most people agreed with. But thanks to former Wallabies John Langford and David Croft, along with the chairman Adam Castleton, that wasn't right. He got it completely wrong. So now we're also got the situation where people like Professor John Fairclough of the Progressive Rugby unit, who've been pushing, getting rugby to change its attitude to headshots. It's made a mockery of the World Rugby claim of player welfare is number one in their priority list, and of course it's not. But World Rugby may take action, and I say may with a big M-A-Y, because they claim they're waiting for the full written judgment before they review the decision. And they're going to be under a lot of heat in the next couple of days to reassess this whole decision-making process. And they have the power to say, look, that's wrong. It didn't fall below the foul play threshold for a red card, and we think he should be banned. And that could happen. It just depends whether this amazing sort of loud and raucous yelling and yowling from most of the rugby world calling for Farrell to be banned has an effect. But of course, there are people now saying, yeah, that process was absolutely right, led by Sean Edwards, who said the system has worked, and Kevin Sinfield, who says that he's basically seeing 2,000 tackles, the last 2,000 tackles Owen Farrell's made, and this is just one mistake. But that shouldn't work as a rider for any incident, should it? I mean, one mistake is one mistake, and it's left a guy failing a HIA. Well,
yeah, and he could well miss, several weeks of the World Cup now because of that. Okay, so was it a foul tackle? That's all that. The only question that has to be answered, isn't it? Was it a foul tackle? This is just absurd. So now this bunker, this committee, that is put in place to decide these things on the field and take the pressure off the referee. This has just made this an absolute mockery of this, because now outside of that, there's another committee that can then decide that those who are in place to decide these things can't actually decide these things. So here's a question for you.
Add World Rugby reviewing the full judgment. That's another committee. So they've really clarified the whole system, haven't they? And of course, if this was a Tongan or Samoan or Chilean or Portuguese player, would they have got off?
No, there's no way. Look, it was a French or Argentinian play. Would they have got off? We said, they always play foul. This is what they do. I just think the accusation, this is the England captain or whatever. I mean, there's got to be some credit to that. I mean, else how can you explain it? Every single angle that I'm watching on this, it is a foul hit. It gets upgraded on the field, and now it gets completely So what does it determine? That because it should have been a yellow on the field, he's now able to play. If that is a legitimate tackle, then nothing that World Rugby has said about protecting the head and protecting the welfare is relevant anymore, is it? If that is a legitimate tackle now.
Absolutely, and if you put yourself in the position of one of the players who's currently starting pre-season training in what they call the community game, the below professional level in England, you now have to go into every match and will be penalised if you make a tackle higher than the base of the sternum. His tackle was just below the bloke's nose. I mean, so how do you say that the game is the same for everybody anymore? It's not, is it? There are special rules being instigated for the world's best players, and it's just not right.
Look, I was reading some comments down on this on rugbypass.com, where you work, of course, and some of the things are saying like this is a defence of comparable. If to a shoplifter saying, well, if the shop wasn't open, I wouldn't be able to take anything out of the shop. I think that's a really good way. That's a great analogy, isn't it? At some point, the individual has got to be responsible, and it doesn't appear that Owen Farrell is responsible for what he actually did.
Absolutely. And and people like Shaun Edwards are being very clever. They're trying to move it on very quickly by saying, what you should be looking at is the fact that opposition players these days throw up their hands in the air and appeal to the referee. It's getting like football. That's totally separate, Shaun, but do try and bring it in under the cloud the issue state. And then he says that he personally is more concerned as a defence coach of France that the World Rugby can't tell him where the tackle target for a defending player is if somebody picks and goes near the try line because the ball carrier's head is at the height of their hips. He says, I've no idea, and they haven't given me an answer. So, in fact, he's actually then explaining that World Rugby aren't dealing with significant questions about really important situations that are going to happen throughout the World Cup. And, of course, now we've got what we can call the Farrell protocol, which is my shoulder hit him in the head, but just like Farrell, I'm not guilty.
Other big topic, of course, is Intermac out and Pollard out. So how does this radically change now? Your thoughts going into the World Cup about those two teams?
Well, Intermac definitely out, and that means now that Jalabert and Hestoy become the number 10s. That team won't fall apart just because Intermac isn't there, because everything revolves around the skipper inside him. So the 10 is important, but it's not the absolute fulcrum of that team. For South Africa, as we've spoken before, the man is the fulcrum. Pollard is the guy who is the most important player in that back division for South Africa. He is here in the UK. Jacques is being very clever in his role as head coach of the Springboks, saying, look, he can't play a whole test match yet, brackets, but he's going to be training like mad with us in the next couple of weeks. And we can, of course, until later in August, name him in the squad. Somebody would obviously have to drop out. So I don't think Pollard is completely out of this World Cup. Unlike Intermac, it's a really, really, really sad situation because, the incident itself, it didn't seem to be anything major in it. He just ran into Finn Russell, who's not one of the heaviest and largest men in the world, and he just sort of held his knee a bit and walked off. And now the scan is, as Shaun Edwards said, the French management was waiting for the scan, expecting to say, a couple of weeks. He said the scan suddenly showed we'd lost our number 10. But, they have strength and depth in that position in the sort of game plan that they play. And Dupont will be the key man. The 10 will be the link man. So, I see that as not a major problem for them. For South Africa, and again, unless Manny Libbok suddenly proves he is really the answer to the absence of Pollard, South Africa will be operating below the level they need to be.
Devlin.
Oh, my goodness me!
The platform.